сами упомянули Францию и то, как Азербайджан сталкивается с нападками, фейк.
You mentioned France and how Azerbaijan is facing attacks from fake news. The president of France even allowed himself to attack Azerbaijan at the UN General Assembly. In response, you recalled the overseas territories of France, which are facing real neocolonialism. Then, Joseph Borrell stepped in and also attacked Azerbaijan. Can't Europe be criticized? What is the matter? What's going on?
Европу нельзя критиковать. В чем дело? Что вообще происходит?
Но они не привыкли, что их...
They are not used to someone lecturing them on justice. They are used to lecturing others. They are used to being bowed to, asked for something, consulted, that nothing can be done without their permission. This is how former colonial, and now, some neo-colonial countries are used to living and thinking. And this is deeply rooted in their minds. In principle, we have never had any problems with France. I will tell you even more. We cooperated with France, perhaps even more than with any other European country, before Macron came to power in France. When my father was elected president in 1993, he made his first official visit to France. They were the first to invite him. When I became president in 2003, France was also the first country to invite me, and my first visit was there. Then, we actively cooperated. Many French companies worked here. We have 13 twin cities with French cities.
Twin cities?
Yes, of course. But these exorbitant ambitions and unfounded megalomania of the Macron government essentially threw all this into the abyss. Because when the Second Karabakh War began, and they clearly sided with the occupiers, this was the first such signal that something in our relations wasn't right, well, on their part. Then, they had to accept these results, but continued to do everything to harm the process. Mr. Barnier, who was recently thrown out of the post of Prime Minister, illegally visited Karabakh as a French politician after 2020. So, all these interference attempts led to the fact that our relations simply slid into a crisis. But even more was to follow. After September 2023, they tried to push this issue through to the Security Council 5 times and failed all 5 times. We were supported by a number of countries that did not allow them to even put this issue onto the agenda. Then, they went the other way. As the saying goes, we will go the other way, to the European Union. They tried to sanction Azerbaijan. What for? For restoring our sovereignty. And they failed yet again. Then, they became completely embittered with us, and are now using all methods to discredit us. As for their colonial past, some perceive this as our response. But I think that this probably has a deeper nature. Whereas, at the very beginning perhaps, it was possible to see it this way. Now, when we are deeply immersed in this topic, when we see the disgusting face of French colonialism, when our representatives actively communicate with residents of French colonies, in their countries, in Baku, and in other locations, we actually see what has been hidden from the world public for so many years. And why? Because no one wanted to get involved. No one wanted a headache, because they blackmail others. Even to us, when our relations entered the Cold War phase, the initial messages were, don't forget that we are a great country.
But what is hidden? You mentioned that something is hidden. What is it?
What do you mean? The merciless exploitation of natural resources.
Do you mean New Caledonia?
Not only that, I think there are 13 or 15 places like New Caledonia. Recently, a tsunami occurred in one of them, the island of Mayotte. Euronews reported yesterday, 75% of the population of the island of Mayotte lives below the poverty line. 30 to 40% of housing is dilapidated. And this is legally French territory, although it is a part of the Comoro Islands. It is one of the islands of the Comoro state. France illegally holds it, but by what right? During the riots in New Caledonia, they killed 13 people, injured more than 100, and arrested more than 1,000. Moreover, the leaders of the popular protest were taken to France and are held in custody. So, this is Macron's dictatorship. This is Macron's regime. And when I talk about this, they unleash all their watchdogs on me, in the form of non-governmental organizations or the media. So again, whereas we, the Azerbaijani public, began to keep this topic on the agenda as a response, now everything is much more serious. Naturally, our hearts are with these peoples, because they have been denied all rights. What is there to be said about New Caledonia, if here, right in the center of Europe, in Corsica, they ban the Corsican language? The Corsican language cannot be used in public places. What is this after all? Is this democracy? Are these human rights? In other words, France may have once been a great country, a country of great thinkers, great scientists, and writers. But it is no longer the case. The Macron regime is essentially turning France into a failed state. Let me give you a few examples. Failure in Africa, the Sahel region. They were told are Jews. Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali. Next up is Chad, which has already asked them out. And Senegal, where the president has changed and a man of national spirit has come to power. And this is only the beginning. A failure in Lebanon, a complete failure. A failure in Azerbaijan, a failure in Georgia. Look at what's happening in domestic politics. A complete chaos. A new prime minister is appointed, and his husband or wife, I don't know who is who there, is appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs. After a failure in the European Parliament elections, they are turned into scapegoats. Barnier, who is pulled out of mothballs, is appointed, but he also becomes a scapegoat. Now they have found someone else. Wouldn't it be better to start with yourself? This is how they used to say in Soviet times, start with self-criticism. Well, look, Moody's is downgrading France's ratings month after month. What AAA rating? Now it's just a little a. Small, small, very small.
The external debt is enormous there.
Failure. Failure after failure. And who is the author of this failure? Mr. Macron. That is what they need to think about, not how to harm Azerbaijan. They have already broken their teeth on us. Let them at least save the rest.
Об нас зубки свои-то поломали уже, хотя бы остаток пусть сохранят.